Hey, what you reading for?
I love me some Shirley Jackson. My first experience with her work was, I want to say, 12 years ago or so, with the last book she would finish from 1968, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. You ever have the experience where you read a book and it's uncanny? It's like the author was able to see into the future, get inside your mind, and then write a story just for you. It's amazing. I had this experience with the final scene in Steppenwolf by Herman Hesse, and I also had this happen to me with Shirley Jackson with We Have Always Lived in the Castle. So I was a huge fan right from my first experience. In her living, Shirley Jackson put out 6 novels, 2 memoirs, and a short story collection. After she died, her husband put out her unfinished novel manuscript, along with a few unpublished short stories and a few transcriptions of her lectures. In the decades that followed, her children would put out 2 short story collections of previously unpublished or uncompiled stories. In total, that gives us 12 books. There have been other publications that take her novels or short stories and packages them differently with a different title, but for the sake of this ranking, I'm only taking into account first-time publications or first-time compiled. So 12 books. Please hit the like button. Let's tell the algorithm that more people need to hear about Shirley Jackson. And I hope you consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Your support is greatly appreciated. Kicking off my ranking in 12th place, her first memoir, Life Among the Savages from 1953. When we think of Shirley Jackson, we often think of her literary, magical, dark works such as The Lottery or The Haunting of Hill House, for example. But there was another side to her career. She produced a lot of working writer material. She wrote for magazines and newspapers, Good Housekeeping, the Saturday Evening Post, Ladies' Home Journal, Women's Home Companion, Gentleman Quarterly, that sort of thing. Slice of life reading, nothing shocking or dramatic or challenging. Anecdotal slice of life stuff. And that's what this memoir is. Anecdotes about her kids and the silly things they say. I'm not the reader for this kind of work. I don't think I'd be able to say who is the reader for this. Shirley Jackson completist, like me, maybe. Next at number 11, Just an Ordinary Day, the first of 2 collections her children would put out after her passing. This one from 1996. 31 years after she passed away. Comprised of 2 parts, the first being previously unpublished stories, and the second part being previously uncollected or uncompiled stories. And they are mostly slice of life, anecdotal writing that's similar to Life Among the Savages. It's still always nice to spend time in Shirley Jackson's writing. And this was an enjoyable read, but ultimately the stories didn't have staying power. I forgot about them quickly after reading them. At number 10, The Sundial, her 4th novel, published in 1958. The family gathers for a funeral where Aunt Fanny has a vision of the impending apocalypse. So naturally, the family returns to the estate. They bunker down and prepare for the event. In The Sundial, I feel that Shirley Jackson leans into the humorous side of her writing. It's not my favorite side of her writing, and it doesn't really work for me here. It came across to me as too mean-spirited. The family is crazy and selfish, and they weren't much fun to spend time with. But that's part of the question the book poses. Is it worth surviving the apocalypse if you have to spend it with this family? Some readers have qualified this book as laugh out loud funny or a wicked pleasure. For me, it's the only novel of hers that I would consider a miss for me. But humor is subjective. At number 9, Let Me Tell You, the second and probably final compilation her children put out, this one in 2015. I like the way this collection is put together. We have some fun stick figure drawings. Also, the way that the stories are grouped here, we have sudden and unusual things that happened. I would rather write than do anything else. When the war is over, I'd like to see you get out of that sentence. So there are fun titles to the way that the stories are grouped together. And this collection offers a good mix of her magical, slightly off, moody writing and also her humoristic slice of life fare. So it's a good mix and I enjoyed it. At number 8, Raising Demons, the second of her 2 memoirs. This one published in 1957. Like the first memoir, Life Among the Savages, this is very much slice of life, low drama, domestic anecdotes. However, I enjoyed it far more than Life Among the Savages. There's a bit more of magic and quirkiness to the writing, which I always enjoy from Shirley Jackson. We follow the family as they move into a new house. They make pincushion dolls. We get a season of Little League Baseball. And it ends on Christmas with the family putting up the tree. It was a nice change of pace from all the trauma and injustice I usually read about. It was a pleasant read that I enjoyed, though it's hard for me to get that excited about pleasant. So it only comes in at number 8. Coming in at number 7, The Lottery and Other Stories, published in 1949. Like most short story collections, it's quite hit or miss, and it's true that her short stories don't hit on me as hard as her novels do. And while for me there are more misses in this collection than there are hits, but the few stories that hit for me really hit hard, like The Lottery or Pillars of Salt or The Dummy. At number 6, The Road Through the Wall, her first novel, published in 1948. Part of a wall is being torn down to make a place for a road that threatens to expose this self-satisfied suburban community for what it truly is. I came to this work having already read several of her books and I was already a confirmed fan. It was a nice experience to see the themes and perspectives and narrative devices that Shirley Jackson would go on to perfect. It was interesting to see them here in an early, unrefined iteration. As a writer myself, I found it inspiring to see that the great Shirley Jackson wasn't always the great Shirley Jackson. She was once a writer with promise, who stuck with it, honed her craft, and would go on to produce some of my favorite works of fiction. The Road Through the Wall was a good debut, and I think the fans of Shirley Jackson might also get a kick out of experiencing her unique voice in its rougher, earlier form. I also feature this book in a recent video I made on American suburbia, which is a theme, when well done, that I seem to find appealing. At number 5, Come Along With Me, her unfinished novel compiled along with a few previously unpublished stories and lectures put out by her husband in 1968, 3 years after she passed away. In her unfinished novel, Come Along With Me, we are introduced to a lonely widow, and the book does a great job setting a mood and presenting the reader with a captivating character who seems to be altered mentally, spiritually, by her loneliness. It works a bit like a longer short story, since like in a lot of Shirley Jackson stories, there is no resolution, but rather a suggestion or suggestions that tease the reader's imagination and invite them to carry the story forward as they see fit. We have that here and done very nicely in Come Along With Me. The Shirley Jackson that is presented here in this collection is a writer at the top of her game. The work is unfinished, yes, but it is still a captivating and rewarding read. Plus, it was interesting, it was nice to see her shed her role of mother and housekeeper that she frequently wore in her short stories and in her memoirs, It's nice to see her take on a different role, that of the accomplished writer that we get in the 3 lectures that we are given here in this collection. At number 4, The Bird's Nest, her 3rd novel, published in 1954. The Bird's Nest was one of her most successful books, thanks in large part to the movie adaptation Lizzie, which came out in 1957. The book features a young woman, Elizabeth, who works at a museum and lives with her aunt. Elizabeth begins showing troubling signs, lewd behavior, bouts of amnesia. She is then diagnosed as suffering from a multiple personality disorder. Halfway through the book, the story shifts perspective away from Elizabeth and onto the psychiatrist who is treating her. It's a sad story, as Elizabeth is unwell and is unlikely to receive the treatment she needs, but the psychiatrist is such a bumbling idiot that he infuses the book with a good dose of humor. However, ultimately, Shirley Jackson uses this story to explore a theme that is common in her work, that of how society imposes standards and expectations on women, especially young women, regardless of the woman's wishes or her personality, and how often older women are complicit in this type of imposition or restriction on women. While this is a theme that Shirley Jackson explores in much of her work, usually with subtlety, in The Bird's Nest, she pushes subtlety aside and takes an over-the-top approach to exploring this theme. It's effective, I think, partly because of the humor and also because of the quality of her writing. A thought-provoking and entertaining book. At number 3, The Haunting of Hill House, her penultimate novel, published in 1959, probably her most famous work along with The Lottery, thanks to the overwhelming critical praise upon its release and the many subsequent movie and TV adaptations that would follow. In the opening pages of The Haunting of Hill House, we are introduced to our protagonist, Eleanor, a young woman who has been sheltered, deprived of contact with others, because she has had to look after her invalid mother. Upon her mother's passing, Eleanor is invited by a certain Dr. John Montag, an investigator of the supernatural. She's invited to spend a few nights in the titular Hill House in the hope of discovering scientific proof of the existence of the supernatural. Eleanor received this invitation because of a claimed experience she had with the supernatural when she was a girl that had come to the attention of Dr. Montag. She is joined in Hill House by another young woman, a carefree artist, Theodora, who also claims to have had a supernatural experience as a child. And the two women are joined by Dr. Montag and the home's heir named Luke. Eleanor takes this opportunity as an invitation to integrate finally adult society, to interact with people like her, not like her dying mother, and to make friends, which she has not been able to do because she's always had to look after her dying mother. So she takes it as an invitation to live an adventure and make friends in the process. I was immediately sucked into the story as Eleanor embraces this invitation with full-blown, unearned optimism that borders on delusion, which I found very relatable, as that's often how I go about life. I'm constantly going off on new adventures, packing up and moving to a new country, no job, no money, no prospects, but assuming everything will work out fine, which is delusional. So I get you, Eleanor. And I love a horror book with literary qualities, which is exactly what this book is. Love it. Coming in at number 2 is Shirley Jackson's second novel, Hangzaman, from 1951. Hangzaman is a novel wherein very little happens and it's riveting. Now, when I first read this book, I liked it without loving it, but it planted seeds in my head. And ever since reading it, my mind will often wander back to those characters, back to that world. And the more time that passes, the more the story grows in my head and the more I love it. It's not one of her more accessible books. It's a bit experimental in many respects. It's an onion of hidden meanings and subtle nods and winks, which makes it a book that is seemingly fresh and new with every read. In fact, years after first reading it, I went back and had a second go at it. And I did a bunch of research and read essays about it. I wrote a 22-page study guide / book club guide for the book. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to the Google Doc in the description box. The protagonist, Natalie, is 17 years old. Although she feels like she's been alive only for a few years, she's a bit off. She has conversations with an imaginary detective who suspects her of murder. She has a strange relationship with her father, who acts as a literary critic of her writing, and she goes off to university where she does not have an easy time integrating student life. I would consider Hangzaman a hidden gem in the dark academia subgenre, although the darkness comes from Natalie herself rather than from the academia backdrop, but Natalie fills it in nicely, I think. Hangzaman has one of my favorite scenes in all of literature. Towards the end of the book, and this is not a spoiler, Natalie takes a bus ride with her friend Tony, who may or may not exist. And they see some guy on the bus and they say, "Oh, look at that guy. I bet he works at a bank and he's going home after a long day's work. Oh, imagine working at a bank." Right? And then they see a woman and they say, "Oh, look at that woman. I bet she's going home to make dinner for her family. Oh, imagine having a family." Right? And the scene culminates with one of them saying, "Oh, look at all these people on the bus. Imagine being people." There is not a single time I get on the bus and that line doesn't flash across my mind. Imagine being people. One of my favorite lines, one of my favorite scenes in all of literature. But it's not my favorite book by Shirley Jackson. That distinction goes to her final completed novel, We Have Always Lived in the Castle, from 1962. Our protagonist, Mary Catherine Blackwood, or Mary Cat, she is 16 years old, though mentally she comes across as younger than that. She lives at home with her older sister, Constance. There is a sort of fairy tale quality to the story, as Mary Cat fancies magical thinking. She's always burying objects in the yard to cast spells that will protect the house, and she'll take magical trips to the moon in her mind. This was my first experience with Shirley Jackson's work, and I absolutely loved it right from page one. Over the years, having read everything Shirley Jackson has put out, I have a slightly different take on We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Here she explores themes that she explored in her other books, namely the hypocrisy and cruelty of a close-knit community. However, the difference in We Have Always Lived in the Castle is that there appears to be more heart. There appears to be kindness and humanity that comes through that her other books lack. And I don't have any hard evidence to support this belief, but I get the sense, taking her entire catalog as a whole, I get the sense that maybe at the end of her life, Shirley Jackson was able to make some sort of peace with her demons. She was able to find heart and kindness from the place where before she only saw cruelty and hypocrisy. Maybe I'm reading too much into the events of We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and maybe it's purely a work of fiction, though that would be out of character for Shirley Jackson. The more I learn about her life, the more of it I see reflected and commented on in her books. So I'm left believing that in her final book, she made peace with her enemies. I don't know if that's true, but it makes me feel good thinking that it might be. So there you have it, my ranking of all the books from one of my favorite authors of all time. What do you think of my ranking? What is your favorite Shirley Jackson book? If you haven't read them all, which one is going to be your next Shirley Jackson experience? I look forward to connecting with you in the comment section. Thank you for giving this video a like and helping out the algorithm. Thank you for subscribing to this channel, and thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.